if you were a government who was going out and saying that we are going to level up the country, that this was your plan to reinvigorate the UK, to save all those left behind towns, having an industrial strategy is almost certainly important. And bear in mind, there is absolutely not one drop of ink being spent to actually write such a plan currently by the Tory government. But even worse, if you were serious about this, one of the things you would want for these left behind towns and regions is to really invest in education. Tony Blair got it right. Education, education, education. It helps so many people out of poverty and levels them up into new lives, new careers, and new opportunities for them. And one of the worst things that this is doing is that pupils who do worse at GCSEs are now no longer going to get university places, but in a something that I've only recently learned from this, pupils who achieved less at GCSEs go on at university levels to achieve far higher grades than you would think, because again they come from poor backgrounds. And I remember when I was at university, I remember so many people who were still at that time. I am the first family member to go to university. That was still something. I was still meeting a lot of people when I was going to university. That was still their thing they were saying, and how proud their parents were of that achievement. So to cut the most poorest people off from this is going to backfire horribly. And this is not how you level up a country. So before we go diving into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee. We can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching and helping support the channel that way. So on with the show. So this comes from the New Statesman with the title of Major of Poorer Pupils Could Be Barred from University Under Loan Rules. The new minimum entry requirements could block access to student loans for up to 55% of disadvantaged children, the exclusive to New Statesman analyst reveals. Under the new government's proposal, reported on the 23rd of February, pupils without the equivalent grade of 4 or above in both English and maths at GCSE, and also without 2 A levels at grade E or above, would be denied student loans. The move would put financial support out of reach of over half of England's disadvantaged children, including pupils who have been eligible for free school meals in the last 6 years and who are looked after or who have been in adopted from care. So how many people is it going to affect in your area? And you can see here the total of this. So Blackpool 52%, Salford 48%, Nottingham 47%, Sandwell 46%, Bradford 45%, Leicester 45%, Peterborough 45%, Portsmouth 44%, Kingston upon Hull 44%. It goes on and on and on. Let's try and find some South Yorkshire places. Rotherham 41%, Sheffield 41%. Again, it goes on and on and on about this disaster that is going to happen to so many disadvantaged children who are now not going to be able to get that opportunity. And of course, in 2019, 55% of disadvantaged children sitting GCSEs in England and Wales failed to obtain the marks of grade 4 and above in both English and maths. 2 years later, in 2021, 70% of the same cohort did not either sit A levels or sat them, but failed to obtain the pass in more than one subject. The proportion of those who failed to meet the government's new test could not be anywhere between the 25 and 55%, depending on the level of overlap between those performing poorly at GCSE and those performing poorly at A level. The new rules expected to be introduced in 2023 would probably also exclude the overwhelming majority of Gypsy and Romania traveler children between the 86% of whom would not pass this new threshold. This could make university inaccessible for all the majority of children of also Black Caribbean backgrounds, between about 20 and 52% of whom would be affected. The Department of Education has also declined to comment on these findings. You take it for granted that people can just do maths and English. But what if the formal school system hasn't worked for you? What if you left school at 13 or 12 and became home educated because you suffered prejudice from classmates or teachers? Asked Sherry Smith, the co-founder of Drive to Survive, which provides support for mentoring for Romania, Gypsy and traveller people entering higher education. A Roma Gypsy herself, Smith has entered academia only to find the flourishing qualification. She now researches barriers to try and travelers to get that access to the higher education in the UK. As part of a package for measures intended to cut public spending on higher education, the government is seeking to both cut student numbers and make graduates repay more of their debt. The proposed minimum entry requirements would also affect those eligible for financial support rather than for higher education itself. As a result, the impact on students failing to meet the new criteria will be less significant from those from wealthy background, all who already also much less likely to take out a student loan. The most likely will be the disadvantaged groups. They will suffer even more. David Robertson, director of the Post-16 Education and Skills at Eton Education Policy Institute. What we have to remember is the government's drive behind this is not equality, but cost savings. If a student from a more advantaged background pays their fees up front, then there is no chance of the government having to write off their loans at some future point. The government has also proposed changes to student loan repayments that would advantage wealthier graduates at the expense of lower earners. Also, modelling by the London Economics, the richest graduates would save around £15,000 on their student loan repayments, while payments by the poorest would be raised by hundreds of thousands of pounds. The Department of Education own inequality impact assessment for the proposals published on the 24th of February notes that lifetime repayments are higher from the bottom 80% of the lifetime earners under the new system, but lower for the top 20%. The assessment further notes that students with certain protected characteristics, such as students from Black and ethnic minority groups, and also those with special education needs, are likely to be disproportionately impacted by the new minimum entry requirements for student loans. In a speech last week, the University Minister, Michelle Dolan, defended the new minimum entry requirements plans, saying that real social mobility is not achieved by pushing young people into university if they are not ready. We need to leave the, quote, one-size-fits-all system in the past and focus on what is best for each individual, except you aren't really doing that. And you are cutting off people if they want to go to university. You are cutting them off completely. However, of course, the Department of Education also declined to present evidence to the New Statesman that people falling short of the new requirements would be better off without going to university. The department's Equality Impact Assessment warns that it is not possible to conduct whether those students affirmed by the minimum entry requirements will go on to achieve better outcomes, as they would have done, or had been allowed to take out a loan. In a 2018 Institute for Fiscal Studies report commissioned by the department did find that people with very low GCSE and A-level attainment actually received a larger earnings boost from attending higher education than those with prior attainment. So going to university has a massive impact on your future life. So cutting people off from that is just a disaster. Socially, socially and future for this country is an economic disaster. These proposed changes were obviously put forward by 2019 Auger Review, which, though it cautioned against the risk of the minimum entry requirements would unfairly penalise the disadvantaged students, the government commissioned a review of the post-18 education strategies. This suggested it could be avoided by contextualizing the grades of the applicants from deprived backgrounds on the basis that their qualifications are potentially understate their potential. An analysis commissioned by, again, the review from UCAS also found that about 20% of the most deprived applicants would need an average attainment of just 3 grades from EEE to DDD to bring their attainment into line with more advantaged peers. These suggestions have not been included in the government's new proposals. So once again, education here taking a massive hit. And again, you need a really good education populace. If you really want to level up this country, you need a good educated populace. You need people going to universities. You need to send them to those schools, and you need to help the most disadvantaged children get up those education levels. But our government is just not doing that. It is not doing that at all. And this will go on to future negatively affect our economy. So again, well, and I said it to Gareth when I was interviewing Gareth Dennis, when a government invests in a country like in infrastructure, it gets that money back. When it invests in education for, again, be it pre-16 or again post-18 education, that money comes back in the taxes that those people go on to earn because they can earn more money from the education that they get. It's a win-win. But this government doesn't seem to care at all. It just desperate any way it can to cut money anywhere it possibly can. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next.